The Tim and Jenn Show.
We want to talk to you about Clean Cause, better caffeine. What's in the can? Our organic, sparkling Herba Mate is a premium pick-me-up that won't let you down. Every can of Clean Cause contains 160 milligrams of better caffeine, and each sip supports recovery from alcohol and drug addiction. 50% of the profits go to assist people into sober living. Check out cleancause.com.
Seaside Palm Beach is an executive luxury addiction treatment center located in Palm Beach, Florida. Our private clients come from all over the world, including business executives, professional athletes, celebrities, and more. Seaside Palm Beach offers first-class amenities and high-end accommodations, including a gourmet culinary experience, ocean views, pet-friendly facilities, and access to cell phones and laptops during your stay. If you or a loved one are struggling with addiction, please call us at 877-959-5053. Again, that number is 877-959-5053.
Now, glutathione is a big word, but it's the body's own master antioxidant. So it's a scavenger for free radicals, for bacteria, and what's relevant now, viruses. This is new to the marketplace. There's no other product on the market that has the ingredient NACET.
And basically NACET increases the production of that glutathione that is in our body already to strengthen and enhance our immune system and keep it strong. Elevated sense of well-being. Supports muscle strength and endurance. Cognitive function. Powerful liver support. Energy. Helps blood sugar regulation. Superior bioavailability of key ingredients.
One of your best defenses against COVID is a strong immune system. Taking GSH Plus as a daily supplement does all that. And now we have the product out on the marketplace.
Hello, my name is Tim Ryan. Welcome to another edition of the Tim and Jenn Show. Sitting here with my amazing wife, co-host, best friend, business partner.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Jimenez Ryan.
Hi, honey.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. And thank you for the great intro, babe.
Always.
Always.
What's up?
What an amazing show we have coming up right now. We have the amazing Lisa Ling on. And seriously, she could just sit there in silence and it will still be a great show. But
yeah,
my God, I have to say, as a woman, I'm a little bit overwhelmed, excited right now. Not overwhelmed, but excited. As a woman, she is a great inspiration for me. I am very particular on who I admire and
yes.
inspire me. I'm very, very cautious and careful of that. And seriously, this woman is a warrior. She's a badass warrior. I love her. I honor her. I respect her. And I thank her for opening the doors for women like us to rise up.
Well, you know, it's interesting because her background and your background are you both grew up with racism and having to learn, I don't know about learning the language, but dealing with a lot of racism and a lot of hate.
I
mean, that's the thing, that you never get away from that.
Well, I think you and I have had these conversations where I've said, babe, first of all, you don't get it. You're not a woman. A woman will always be looked at differently than a man, obviously, right? But if you're of ethnic descent, you looked at completely different. I still have racism happening on occasion to me. You know, it's the craziest thing. I really do believe that ignorance is bliss, and really it has nothing to do with me. Their anger towards other people, like people's anger for being
No, all you
speaking
can
a
do is
different
pray for
language.
them.
Yeah,
Pray for them, but the thing is, where we've come from when I grew up in the 70s, 80s, 90s to now, I think in the past year with COVID and Black Lives Matter and things, people's voices are getting heard, but what's really changed? And the thing about someone like Lisa is she's taking us into so many different situations that people don't understand why people, the Chicago gangs or Asian hate or sex trafficking, people don't really understand the ins and outs of these.
no, they don't. And I feel like you and I talk a lot about the fact, like, what we're doing, is this really making a difference? Is this helping people? Have we helped enough? Or like, we've talked about these things. And at the end of the day, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, this movement that has been started by the Lisa Lings of the world, by the Tim Ryans of the world, it's gonna make sense. It has to. It has to.
It's in
this movement has already started, and I'm grateful for that.
And the thing that I really think make people be these game changers is having compassion and empathy and understanding and listening to people, but not just listening, offering hope and solutions. And, it's good to see the ashes come out of the storm.
Sometimes people just want to be heard.
Yep.
And they want you to listen to their story or hear them. There's a difference, and people just want that. People are a lot of times we're like, how do we fix this? And how do we change this right now? And it's like, maybe by just listening.
Exactly.
It could be as simple as that.
And it is the beginning of fall.
I'm so excited. Okay, so first of all,
throw that in. It's the beginning of fall.
I was not sweating wearing a jacket.
Oh, here. We can put that portable air conditioner in the garage. At least in Florida, we have central air.
So it rained last night.
Good, and we needed
out of nowhere. Like, it was supposed to be sunny.
Lightning.
It was 100 degrees where we were at yesterday at one point. Then the sun. Then we went through a fire.
Yep.
Then all of a sudden we get to LA and it's like pouring thunder. I thought they were earthquakes. Like, it was like LA
nice.
went like crazy. It was
nice
just rainy,
to see
guys.
some rain
just
to
rain.
Get up to feed the squirrels this morning and see water all over the ground. We needed it bad, but fall's here. It's a good time to see the seasons.
It was just a weird day. Okay, so it was super hot. Then there's fires. Then that, but our Twitter, our Instagram, Facebook,
WhatsApp app all went down.
The world went ballistic.
And what's that due to the whistleblower being on 60 Minutes?
Okay, and then we're like, you guys, something's up. Let's just call it what it is. It's something's up. I'm so afraid to say that because they might come get me for saying that. But like, honestly, that's weird.
That is weird. But you know what? We're sitting here in our studio in Southern California.
That's what I mean. What's even weirder is that no one's going to do anything about this to get the real truth about the answer about why
Who knows?
Facebook went out for 6 hours.
Well, now they're talking about 1.5 billion users' information being sold on the dark web. Who knows? You don't know what to believe. But what it's made me talk about, I'm almost ready to get rid of Facebook and just delete it. I like Twitter. I like LinkedIn. Instagram's Instagram, but it's turned into so much hate and negativity, and it's just toxic. I don't know why I need this.
Well, the thing was, so this is it. I keep saying, as you're talking, all I keep thinking about is, sorry guys, I just don't post lately. Like, there'll be like days I don't even look at anything.
Right.
So I'm like not caught up on the Facebook, social media whole thing at all right now, thankfully. And it's been like that for a while now, a really long time. But we know why I'm not doing anything is because I'm in pain. So I don't get to like sit there and
okay, good. Yeah. But what I was making the point is, we get to have Lisa Ling on our show today. Do you know that?
Mm-hmm. I'm excited.
I am excited because watching people over 30 years in their career and where they've been and what I'm fascinated by people. What was it like working with MS-13
I know.
in Ecuador?
I know.
Or I mean, I'm fascinated by these things.
It's an honor to be able to say that Lisa Ling is going to be on our show right now. She's coming on, and that we get to interview her, and that her season premiere of season 8 is
Life
Sunday.
with Lisa Ling this Sunday night, 10 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. But without further ado, let's welcome Lisa Ling to the show. And coming up on the Tim and Jenn show right now, I am truly honored, Jennifer. This guest I met about 4.5, 5 years ago. She came out and did a documentary for her series, which we'll talk about, but she filmed at our family support group. She met with my son that had passed away with his girlfriend and her family. She was interviewing Chicago gang members about the opiate epidemic, but we're able to go to dinner and spend time. And our guest here has more compassion and caring and empathy than I've ever seen. We'd like to welcome my friend, Lisa Ling, to the show. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, how are you, Tim and Jenn? So nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Thank you so much for doing this show for us.
Yeah, you're very busy. I mean, this Sunday it premieres again, Life with Lisa Ling, the 8th season. But you've been in this field 30 years. I mean, you started at 18 years old. What made you want to get into journalism, Lisa?
Well, you're right. It is somewhat disturbing to think about the fact that I've been working in this field for over 30 years. I actually started working in TV when I was pretty young. I was 16 years old when I started hosting a teen magazine that was based in Sacramento, California, which is where I was from. But to be honest with you, the reason why I wanted to pursue broadcast journalism in the first place was I grew up with the television always on in my house. My parents were divorced when I was 7. It was sort of my favorite babysitter, but no one that I watched on television looked anything like me except for Connie Chung. And at the time, I was a young girl. She just symbolized all that was intelligent and graceful, and I just thought, you know, she is allowing me to know what is possible. She was the only Asian person on a national stage. And if you ask any Asian journalist of my generation, I would venture to guess that all of them will say that Connie inspired them to pursue this line of work because, one, we thought it was all that was available to us, but it allowed us also to know the possibilities.
That is an amazing answer. But I want people to understand, you grew up with a lot of racism and a lot of bullying, then the trauma of going through a divorced family, and you've taken all your pain, trials, and tribulations to extend this into a career as a journalist, an investigative journalist. You've been everywhere, from Iraq to Iran to Afghanistan to 9/11 to Ecuador, here, there, and everywhere. But you're the one that's able to bring us into those homes and carry those messages and experiences.
Absolutely.
Well, you know, Tim, it's interesting because on the one hand, I did pursue broadcast journalism because I thought that was the only outlet available to me as an Asian American. But once I did start getting hired, particularly for a show called Channel One News, which was a show that was seen in middle schools and high schools across the country. In fact, Anderson Cooper was one of my colleagues on the show, and it was a show that sent its correspondents out into the world to cover stories. So I covered stories in so many of the countries that you mentioned when I was in my late teens and early 20s for this show. And it was those experiences that I had in the world, being in Afghanistan and being surrounded by young 10-year-old looking boys. They didn't even know how old they were, but carrying American-made rocket launchers and you know, semi-automatic weapons. Seeing those things propelled me to want to continue telling these kinds of stories and also being out in the world. And I do think that my upbringing, I mean, look, I went through my own issues. We all have our traumas, right? And I was this Asian American kid growing up without parents around because my parents got a divorce when I was 7, and they, you know, when they were around, they were working all the time. And you know, I was teased a lot as a kid. I was a popular kid. I had lots of friends, but it was just this constant reminder that I was different. And so I do think that those experiences helped me to be able to understand what people are going through a little bit better, because when you're faced with adversity at whatever level, I do think that it helps you to become more compassionate and understanding of things that other people are going through.
Well,
So I was just going to say, you're so compassionate. We were talking about it last night, how empathetic you are, and how you give voices to these stories and these situations, good, bad, or indifferent, but the voices are being heard. And when we see this, I mean, like, I'm talking back when I'm watching your show. I'm screaming, I'm laughing, I'm crying.
we're
Like,
tweeting, we're doing everything.
We're like so in that show with you, and that story. And I wonder for me, with you being so empathetic and so compassionate, like like you can't fake that. It just transcends who you really are. How do you deal with that trauma or all that energy after you're done shooting?
It's a great question, Jen. I'm lucky that I get to work with these incredible teams who've worked for my show for a long time. And the people that I work with are as, I think, empathetic and passionate about what we do as I am. It's not just a job for us. We are really trying to allow people to better acquaint themselves with their fellow human beings. And so there certainly have been times when we have finished shooting with someone who has shared the depths of their heart and their soul with us. And, we'll all get back in the car and just start crying together, but at least we have each other. And so my team has been a real sounding board for me. But it is true, after 8 seasons of doing this show, our 8th season is about to air, and 5 seasons of doing our previous show, Our America on OWN, I think that people have come to trust that we are going to tell their stories responsibly. Ours is not a show that is sensational or exploitative. And so I think a lot of people feel like, if I'm going to tell my story, I want to tell it on this show because I'm not going to be exploited. And I got to tell you, people have shared with me things that they haven't even shared with their closest friends or family members, because they have faith that we're going to tell their stories responsibly. So it's this team effort. But it's a team that is filled with people who truly, certainly we have our job, right, to make a living, but our jobs go beyond that. And we do feel like we are increasing awareness about our fellow humans.
Well, and I can attest, Lisa, to when you came and worked in Naperville, Illinois 4.5 years ago, and you were pregnant with your second child at the time. But how in tune you were in the questions you asked. And even when you broke away and you were in Chicago interviewing the gang members or my son's former, you were in contact. Your team was. The questions. This isn't a show to go out and just sensationalize and exploit. This show really shows people with care and compassion, the good, the bad, what's really going on in all these different situations out there. And we will give a shout out, if he's still with you, Whit Freeze. If Whit Freeze still works with you. I grew up with Whit. I've known Whit my entire life. Our dads were both stockbrokers. So give a high five to Whit Freeze. Tell him to return a phone call.
I definitely will. Well, it's interesting, just thinking back to that experience in Chicago, again, the people who shared with us really shared their deepest hearts. And I am proud of the fact that when you come to our shows about addiction, about incarceration, about sex trafficking, those are topics that are easily sensationalized, right? There are these underbelly topics, and because of all the stigma around addiction, right? I mean, I can't tell you how many. I mean, you've seen all the shows that are completely just exacerbating the stigma. But these are real people with real lives who in many cases are using drugs to self-medicate, and what people don't understand is that once you become addicted, it takes a community to help people get through it. It's almost impossible to do things on your own because you've lost everything. And I do feel like we have provided people with enough information to be able to understand that addiction is a disease, it's a mental illness, and that in some cases, in many cases, there's a genetic component to it. And if nothing else, I hope people have at least taken those things from the shows that we've done about addiction.
And you truly educate. And people ask, you know, the opiate epidemic or sex trafficking, it all comes down to education. And we need to start with the youth and educating America, and people need to get involved. You know, Jen and I were driving yesterday and we're on Fairfax, and there was a 75, 80-year-old lady trying to cross the street in a wheelchair with one leg, obviously homeless. And I just sit here and I want to break down. I want to get out. I want to hug her. I want to help her and say, you know, what can we do to help you? But how did this happen in our country? I mean, 80,000 homeless people in Los Angeles County alone. It's heart-wrenching. You know, you're out in the area. You see it all over the country, and you've seen it in India and the world. What can we do better? What do you think we could do better?
Well, the reality is that we've gotten to a place where I think we've just become desensitized, period. I mean, look at COVID, for example. I mean, over 700,000 people alone in the United States, and there's still a debate about how, you know, to what extent we can try and protect ourselves and our neighbors and our friends. And I think that the last year and a half, while on the one hand, it has exposed so much and really peeled the Band-Aid off of a lot of things, on the other hand, because we are also addicted to our devices, right? I think that we have become less inclined to feel compelled to interact with each other as human beings. When we're more concerned about how many likes we get when we post things on social media, then the you know, the woman who is walking across the street without a leg, and that just becomes something that, like, you know, if you saw it online, you just swipe through.
Right.
That's a problem. And so, you know, we have this opportunity with our show, and look, I fall victim to it too. You know,
Sure.
I'm as addicted to my device as anyone else. But we do try and make a concerted effort to share with people, you know, the stories of humanity. I think we really need that. And I think that, you know, the one positive that has come from all of this is I do think that there is a recognition of the fact that we are abandoning our sense of humanity right now. There is, I think, a movement in the other direction, I hope.
You know, it's interesting, Lisa. We had, Jennifer and I both caught COVID last year, and it almost killed us. We had it for 10 weeks. I would rather kick heroin in a prison cell than go through what we went through. But then all the after effects, and we were one of the first to get vaccinated, but having to go travel then and do interventions and working in the trenches was a whole different world. And I know you were having to film and deal with all this. How do you find the balance between your career, the COVID world, the Asian hate that's going on? I want to hit on that. And then going home to your husband and two beautiful children. I mean, how do you find your health and wellness balance?
It's a great question. And I think that we're all kind of grappling and trying to figure out how to maintain our mental health in the best way possible.
Right.
My kids are very, you know, they occupy so much of my time and my headspace. And so when I'm home, I really try hard to be as immersed as I can in their lives. And in some ways, I'm lucky that I have a job that allows me to travel so that when I'm in the field, I can be immersed and focused pretty exclusively on things that I'm doing. I mean, my heart goes out to the parents, particularly the moms, who are trying to juggle everything every day. I also have incredible family members who have been a constant in my life. I couldn't do the kind of work that I do if I didn't have my mom coming over every day, my sister-in-law here, and my husband's mom. But taking care of one's mental health and one's mental well-being is so important. And I do think that for me, the best thing that I can do these days, I've recognized, is put this away.
Yes.
For a little while during the day, and pick up a book, or just have some, like, listen to music and just allow myself to zone out. It's really hard to do. But the one thing that COVID has done is, and COVID in combination with these devices has done, is we feel like we are working all the time because we're answering and responding to messages and emails at all times of the day, as opposed to like 9 to 5 in an office. So for me, trying to allow myself that space to just kind of zone out and become whole with myself is really essential for me. And, you know, in terms of the hate that's been going on, the Asian hate, look, I think we're experiencing a real reckoning in this country.
Yes.
You know, again, COVID has exposed these tensions and things that have been brewing beneath the surface. And while it's been devastating, you know, the acts of hate being perpetrated in the Asian community, when you look back at the history of Asian Americans, which we don't get to read or know about in school,
Right.
you see that there has been this pattern of discrimination that Asians have faced since Asians first arrived in this country. And what I've tried to do with my own kids, I mean, my kids, they're only 8 years old and 5 years old, but they know about the Japanese internment. They know about the Chinese Exclusion Act, but they also know about Jim Crow laws, and they know who Rosa Parks was. They know who Dolores Huerta was. It's really important for me to be able to equip them with, you know, the errors of the past, but also the triumphs and the contributions of communities. Because, you know, you bring up the term empathy, and I really believe empathy is something that you can grow. You know, it's something that is developed, and it's best developed when kids are young. And so by allowing them to be exposed to the contributions, the challenges, but also the triumphs of different communities, I think that contributes to kids growing up becoming more empathetic adults.
And you're spot on with that, but I think it takes characters like you and your husband and your family and that core team that is there to support you and educate your children. I grew up with a lot of racism because we're all adopted. My little brother and sister are Native American, Chippewa Indian, and there was no Hispanics or African Americans where we grew up. So I grew up with a lot of the words being thrown around, and you did too, Jennifer. I mean, you immigrated, you were born here, raised in Argentina, brought back here. You couldn't speak English. You were a fish out of water, and at 13, you become a supermodel, and your whole world changed drastically.
Yeah. I mean, when you were talking about your kids and opening their minds up to, and giving them that knowledge, I feel that that's what you're doing by doing the show and telling these stories and showing these stories. I feel that thankfully you're doing this because we need these stories to be told. And yes, the youth, we've been talking so much about the youth right now. You know, it's heartbreaking to know that there's, you know, roads that these kids are going down that's going to be terrible because they don't have a home life or a foundation. And
they don't have structure at home.
Thankfully, there are parents like you know, and Tim and you know, my people that care, you know, and like whatever roads people go down, you're always there with support and love, you know, and it's important to show that, you know, we need love right now, I feel like.
Absolutely. And what we just try to do is kind of open a door a little bit for the audience to just familiarize themselves again with their fellow humans. And I do think that by equipping our kids, you know, it's interesting that right now one of the fiercest debates going on in our government, in school districts, in local legislatures, in families around the country is over the teaching of history.
Yeah.
Is it unbelievable? It's
shocking because people are afraid that some kids may grow up feeling bad about, you know, about what one race has done to another. And I mean, of course, that's not the intention of teaching history. You know, we teach history so that we can recognize the mistakes that we've made, right? The errors that have happened so that we can figure out how to move forward in a way that is functional and respective of all people.
Well, I mean, where do you think it's changed from your paternal grandfather in 1930 coming to college in the United States to where it is now? I mean, is it changed much? I mean, it's changed some, but there's a lot more work to be done?
Well, I actually don't think it's changed that much. This year has been a pivotal one because, again, it has And I think that for all the ills of social media, look, I learned about Juneteenth on social media. I didn't even know
Sure.
what Juneteenth was
Yeah.
in June of 2020. And so that realization propelled me to want to devote an entire season of our show to those incidents or those moments in American history that didn't make it into the history books, so that we can dissect those incidents and look at how they've come to define us and where we're going, how we're moving forward. And I think that while things I don't think changed much from when my grandfather came to this country to go to school till now, there has been a seismic shift in the last year and a half. I think in part because people have become more aware, and those Black Lives Matter protests, when all those people took to the streets protesting, for social justice. Look, people have different impressions of what that was about, but to me, it was this incredible moment where people said, we can't continue with the status quo anymore.
Right.
Figure out like how our systems are rooted, right? How they've been rooted in inequity and equality and racism in order to move forward and change things. And one of the things that I'm proudest of, as I mentioned, we've done so many episodes of our show about incarceration, about gang life, about
Right.
addiction. And I can't tell you how many messages and emails I've gotten from law enforcement
Sure.
who've said to me things like, wow, when in law enforcement, we're trained to approach these issues in exclusively this punitive way. And your shows are reminders of the humanity of people. And that's what it takes, I mean, again, things are starting to change, but when you pursue a career in law enforcement, in the military, you're not trained to better understand people, to know the history of a community.
Yep.
Police officers work in communities that they don't know anyone, right?
It's Jennifer and I, one of the last big conferences we did was present to 1,200 judges and law enforcement professionals in the state of Indiana on how to deal with people that are lost in addiction or mental health and, shift people's thinking. And that's what's happening now is there's a big shift happening because of people like you, Lisa, because you go on the front lines, you share these stories. I want to ask you, who's the most powerful person you've ever interviewed?
Oh, Tim, that is so hard.
I know.
And I, my answer to you wouldn't be people that you know.
Good. The average person.
Yeah, they would just be everyday people who've gone through the extraordinary, right? And have lived to tell. I mean, those are the people who impress me most. Last season, we did an episode called The Prison and the Prep School. And it's about a book club inside the prison that houses more inmates serving life sentences than any other institution in the state. And it's a transformative book club because it allows the incarcerated men and the prep school young men to have this space to talk about feelings. And you would never think that something like this would happen in a prison.
Yeah.
But the prison inmates actually allowed this space for these prep school boys to talk about things. And you just cannot believe the things that came out of the mouths of the prep school boys, because these guys who were accused of the most horrific things allowed them that space. And that show culminated. The prison, the incarcerated men felt so moved by that experience, they decided that they wanted to start a scholarship for a young man who might otherwise not be able to afford an education at this prep school. And they raised about $30,000 to fund the education of a young man to go to this prep school. And, prison inmates make like less than $1 a day.
$1 a day. Yep. I've been there. I was a prison inmate. But people got to understand too, it's you getting in and showing these stories. Because I was in prison, and you know what? 90% of the people are really good people. They just came from the wrong sort, made a bad choice, whatever. Yeah, there's some really 10% are bad, but the empathy, compassion, they want to help. I mean, who was the LA Crip guy? Tootsie. They put him on death row, but he was writing all the children's books.
Yeah, Tukey.
Yeah, I mean, he was a powerful man, and unfortunately he was sentenced to death, but he was able to change behind the wall
I have a question. What is your heartbreak story? What's the story of all the stories that you've covered and told? What's the one that just the heartbreak one?
That's another hard question because there have been so many, but I will give you an answer to that. So years ago, we were working on an episode about sex trafficking. And I was interviewing a 17-year-old girl whose relatives sold her into life at about, like 8 or 9 years old. And she was still pretty sensitive. And she agreed to share her story with me. And I asked all of my male colleagues to sit outside of the room so that I would be in her room, just the two of us and the gentleman who was running our camera. And as she was telling the story, and she was so composed, she would talk about how on some nights she would call the cops and beg them to arrest her so that she could have a safe place to sleep. And more than that, they wouldn't do it. And as she was telling this story, the most remarkable thing happened. I heard all of my male colleagues outside of the room going,
Geez.
like they just lost it. And then I could totally lost it. And that poor girl was like comforting me because it just hit us at the core so strongly. But, I will never forget Ashley's story and the strength that it took for her to tell the story. And again, after you hear from someone like Ashley, when you see young women on the streets working the tracks, you will never think about them the same way.
Exactly.
And that's the objective of what we're trying to do.
And we thank you for that.
Thank
and
you
I mean,
so much for it.
This Sunday night, it is season 8 of This Is Life with Lisa Ling. And this is going to be on Vincent Chin, your first episode, right?
Yes.
Want to give us a highlight?
Yeah. So every episode, as I mentioned, is grounded in something that happened in American history. And we figure out how it impacted where we are today. And, look, we're all familiar now with how Asian Americans have been scapegoated because of COVID. And most of us by now have seen some videos of just brazen violence against Asian people, particularly our elders. But what a lot of people may not realize is that there has been a pattern of discrimination as recently as 9/11. After 9/11, our Muslim and South Asian communities were severely harassed and targeted. But in 1982, when Detroit, our automobile capital of the country, of the world really, was experiencing the economic downturn, Japanese car manufacturers were being blamed for producing more fuel efficient cars. And so a young man named Vincent Chin was out at a bar. He was Chinese American, out celebrating his bachelor party, and accused by 2 out-of-work auto workers of being Japanese. And they got into an altercation, got kicked out of the bar. They waited for Vincent Chin, and then they chased him down and beat him to death with a bat. And the 2 men who perpetrated the attack didn't serve a single day of jail or prison time. They were fined $3,000 and made to do some community service. But that launched a movement for Asian American civil rights that really galvanized the community. And so that's our first episode. And Tim, you lived in Chicago for a long time. We also have an episode about the Chicago race riot of 1919 and how you can draw a direct line from that race riot to what's happening in the streets of Chicago today. Not a week goes by when you don't see statistics about how many people are being shot and killed.
It's heart-wrenching. It's a killing field, and it's the South Side and the West Side. And I have a lot of friends in those areas, and I used to be in those areas, and it's just heart-wrenching. But all those kids that are going to these gangs, they have no more community centers. They have no more mentor programs. They're from broken homes, and it's just heart-wrenching. And I thank you for talking about that, Lisa, and all the other subjects, because you bring awareness, which will ultimately bring solutions to each of these communities nationwide and worldwide that you're touching.
I mean, I really want to thank you for bringing our voice alive and our stories by talking about people who are in recovery or women who have been sexually assaulted, or, just the stories. Thank you. Thank you for telling my story in there.
Yes. So if you are listening, tune in this Sunday night, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, CNN, This Is Life with our dear friend, Lisa Ling.
Thank you so
Lisa,
very
thank you
much.
for your time. We know you're busy promoting the show. We wish you the best of luck, and we'll see you
Thank
soon,
you.
okay?
Thank you for being a warrior.
You are so lovely. Thank you for exercising your voices and using your platform to raise awareness and elevate humanity. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Have an amazing day. We'll talk to you soon. For the
Bye.
Tim and Jenn Show, we're signing out. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.